Christos, Master of Botany. Apocrypha 7. URIM and THUMMIM. Maria and the Philosopher Stone. Maria, the Invitation. Maria, the Garden of Maria. Maria, Plants and Meaning. Maria, Gaia the Kingdom. Maria, the Meadows. Maria, in the Kitchen. Maria, Green Land. Maria, Maria Pastora Sage. Maria, the Ember Method. Maria, Tiny Star. Maria, the Not Everyday Reality. Maria, the Shaman People. Maria, the Mushroom Kingdom. Maria, Directions and Places. Maria, the Tears of God. Maria, the Kingdom of Animals. Maria, the Root Kingdom. Maria, the Polyatom of Consciousness. Maria, Color Spectrum Bliss. Maria, Alpha Creation Vision. Maria, Negative Time Space. Ultimate Symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria, the Invitation. After finishing his shopping at the market, Christos began his journey home. However, he felt a peculiar sensation as if an invisible force was pulling him away, guided by love, and he simply couldn't stay, even though he thought the lecture that evening wouldn't take place. When he arrived there, the sun was just about to set, casting its last rays on the farmer's land. Maria, who hadn't been at the market stall earlier, was now sitting on a bench next to the door. As she saw Christos, she immediately jumped up as if she had never been sitting before. The farmer, standing behind the house, warmly greeted Christos and welcomed him as the rightful friend of his beloved daughter. The Master of Botany said, "We are very grateful to have you by our side, my dear Christos. Our garden is meant to bring the beauty of nature closer to people who have forgotten it because they prioritize gold, silver, and gemstones over the beauty of creation. Being the Master of Botany means restoring the true value of God's creation, and you undoubtedly belong with us." They enjoyed a meal together, drinks, and hearty laughter, while the farmer entertained them with amusing stories about the proud behavior of the wealthy towards the farmers. However, after the wealthy had experienced the healing power of herbs and had learned their applications, they were plagued by guilt when they looked into their own eyes. As it grew late, they bid farewell as Christos had an hour-long journey ahead of him. He realized that the master he had encountered felt more like a loving father than just a teacher or farmer. He understood that this was the true essence of a mentor. A mentor is someone who becomes like a loving father, a good friend after work, and a wisdom provider. True mentors never demand anything in return for their teachings. Christos now knew the kind of master he was seeking, a mentor who embodied love, friendship, and wisdom without expecting anything in return. Ultimate Symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria. The Garden of Maria. Christos could not wait since, imagine Maria would introduce him into her garden. This was better than everything else one could ever dream of. The next day he packed the belongings and had a good tea with Master Pythagoras, and before noon the road smiled at him, and the birds were singing at him, as if it was time for sunrise or sundown. Farmer was friendly as always, and after a good meal, they greet him to the new home of the Master of Botany. The garden was huge, and after the vines, they went to the right along the tomato grove, and past the compost, until after the herbal hills, they reached the garden of the Master. Maria said to Christos, "Welcome to my garden, what is mine is now yours." She gave him a hug, but this time it lasted 2 minutes. This feeling of oneness was completely new, the complete alignment with the vector symmetry making himself but as missing counterpart he did not even know of before. The twin creation, but completely opposite in any direction, still in full alignment with the opposite part in full symmetry, and would come together based on the individual alignment with the octave of creation. This was the true name and the true purpose of the two. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The plants and their meaning. As she poured the tea, he gazed at her with fascination, appreciating the symmetry where the feet were always the epitome of perfection. Yet, it was the overall appearance, the body language and the entirety of her being that captivated him. He could never tire of it. She was like a vibrant and meaningful masterpiece, crafted by our beloved Father with the utmost depth and intention. Even the animals, from dogs and cats to goats and sheep, would come and go, observing the harmony of Master Maria's garden. Maria said to Christos, "When I arrived here, it was fascinating to learn from the farmer and become a master of botany myself, even though I wasn't fully immersed yet. I was filled with curiosity about what there was to learn, as it was my first opportunity to go to school and expand my knowledge. I had some questions for Master Farmer." Maria asked Master Farmer, "Father, how many types of plants do I need to learn about, and what are their purposes? Which herbs should I use if someone falls ill?" Master Farmer replied, "Oh, it's quite simple. God has provided us with a vast library of knowledge, containing everything we could ever need. There are only 3 types of plants. Now, my beloved daughter, can you guess what they are?" Maria pondered for a moment and then answered, "Well, there are edible and poisonous plants." Master Farmer exclaimed, "Correct, indeed." Maria continued, "But I can't think of a 3rd type. I'm unable to comprehend it." Master Farmer responded, "That is a hidden secret, concealed from us. The 3 types of plants are edible, inedible, and poisonous." Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Pilgrim. Gaia, the kingdom of plants and animals. Maria said, "I've heard this word before but never really thought about it." Master Farmer replied, "Yes, it's the most fascinating of them all. In reality, there was only one type, and that is the inedible plants. From the very beginning, humans have understood the true meaning behind these plants. Indigenous peoples still hold onto this concept from God. The true name for this type of plant is the tears of God, symbolizing our connection to God and the creation, reminding us to never become conditional or disconnected. The wise shamans of indigenous tribes have preserved the knowledge of using the tears of God. When they seek answers or guidance, they enter the kingdom of plants and directly communicate with the plants themselves. They can also enter the kingdom of animals and receive the wisdom and blessings. They return with the answers they seek. This is known as the non-everyday reality, where the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom serve as living libraries, engaging in meaningful conversations instead of lifeless books. In this special grove, we have some of the tears of God, and I suggest we start with this green plant over there. Let's enjoy a cup of tea made from it." Maria turned to Christos and said, "This is the fundamental essence of botany, the ancient wisdom that has been passed down for ages." Christos exclaimed in astonishment, "Wow, that's fascinating. I've learned that the martial art masters of the East also use this to connect with their higher state of consciousness, becoming superior warriors. I've only tried the hashish from the nomadic warriors, known as hashashin, who wear black garments in the desert. But when I smoke their shisha, violence doesn't even cross my mind." Maria laughed and replied, "Yes, that's true. Since it connects you with your higher self, it naturally promotes peace. We are not meant to be warriors or harm others." "You're absolutely right. It's a secret practice, known only to a select few groups of people, but it has led to the disconnection from God that we face in our modern world. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The Shire. Christos asked, but dear, what does it look like in the non-everyday reality? Maria replied, let's find out, because why name something that you need to experience anyway? Christos exclaimed, it always seems to be the same with everything related to God, His eternal wisdom, and His answers to our questions. Maria responded, oh yes, my love, just give me a hug. Here's your tea. Now that you've learned about all the different types of plants and their true names and meanings, the second lesson is a practice that we always do. To align ourselves with our garden, we simply need to be present, do nothing, and enjoy the symmetry. That's what we're doing now, and this meadow next to the table is perfect for lying down and relaxing. Christos asked, but what thoughts should I focus on and hold within myself? Maria answered, it's best to completely let go of your focus and see what happens. What always helps is to gaze at the sky and see the blue of my Father's eyes, and then to close your own eyes. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The vision. They both settled down, and for 24 minutes, they remained in a state of deep experience, until a goat passed by and grumbled. On the table, they enjoyed some bread, cheese, olives, and a glass of wine. Maria was eager and asked, tell me, how was it? Christos replied, I didn't receive any messages from the kingdom of plants or the kingdom of animals. Maria said, it's not always about them. When we align ourselves with the symmetry in our garden, it can be anything that wants to communicate with us. Christos responded, you're right. I didn't have any specific questions about the plants, so suddenly I found myself in a daydream. I saw, from a very far distance, a vast expanse before me. It was fluid, with a double vortex and shaped like an S. It was incredibly beautiful and unimaginably huge. Then, near the spiral that was closer to me, just above the center, a droplet formed and grew larger and larger until it detached and fell slowly. As it fell toward the center, on the second spiral in the back, another droplet formed and began to fall into the center of its spiral, hitting the fluid slightly later. The first droplet hit the surface of the fluid, causing the spiral to expand like the ripples on a pond when a stone is thrown into it. Then, the second droplet hit its fluid spiral, expanding as well. Eventually, the spirals reached each other in the middle, connecting to the S-shaped spiral, which lit up even brighter than before. At that moment, I saw the stars from a very far distance, as if I were somewhere in the sky witnessing the Milky Way. Maria replied astonished, wow, you made great progress on your first day. Let's have some tea, honey, and you can tell me more. Christos responded, there wasn't much more to it. The feeling remains, as if we entered the next epoch of time, where the cosmic clock advanced the great cycle once again. Maria said, I understand. What a fascinating daydream. I'm proud of you. They returned to have supper with Master Farmer, who had a broad smile on his face when they arrived in his garden. He couldn't wait to hear how far they had gone in Maria's garden and how well Christos performed as an apprentice in botany. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The kitchen. Before noon, Maria said to Christos, boy, I'm hungry. Let's go cook with the farmer. The young tomatoes and cucumbers are just ripe, and the onions are also in the same field. Christos replied, I totally agree, honey. I could never come up with a plausible answer as to whose salad is better, Pythagoras' salad or the farmer's salad. Maria nodded and said, oh yes, I know what you mean. Every Sunday, when we have the Pythagoras garden, I think the same when we eat his salad. Christos smiled and said, I've come to the conclusion that it's the sun, the summer, and the rich soil of Mother Gaia that make the vegetables so tasty and great. It's also interesting how we add a bit of green pepperoni to give the salad a touch of green color and a fresh taste. The farmer joined them in the kitchen. Sometimes lunch and dinner became moments for them to see each other and chat while enjoying their meals. Of course, the morning break was equally important, just like breakfast. In the farmer's garden, the days were long with plenty to do. During the winter, they had more time to reflect and delve into the mindful aspects of life. The farmer exclaimed, It's a beautiful day, and I'm hungry. They all agreed and began preparing the salad, while the farmer cooked his famous thick vegetable pancake in his trusted master pan, large enough to feed 5 people. Ultimate symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria. Greenland. During the meal, farmer asked, How are you doing? Do you like it here? Christos replied, Oh yes, I am enjoying it very, very much. The only problem is that I should focus on learning and memorizing, but I can't help but be distracted by the symmetry of Master Maria. Besides that, I love the moments of relaxation in the meadow, where I harmonize with Gaia's garden and receive wisdom. The vision I had of the galaxy was truly remarkable. Farmer said, yes, I have heard about that vision. It's quite impressive indeed. Now that you have learned about the 3 species of plants, which contain the knowledge of all other plants, what are your experiences so far? Maria chimed in, We have only explored the green land with the green plant. Just imagine what would happen if you were to experience the kingdom of mushrooms or the kingdom of the forest. Oh, boy! Farmer burst into laughter and said, Oh, dear. Curious, Christos asked, What exactly are you talking about? I can enter a meditative state and achieve an alpha state of mind. I have experienced life and walked the path of a pilgrim. I can work quite well, although my body may be sore in the evening. I have even smoked the shisha of the Shaman nomads. I can't understand why you're laughing. Ultimate symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria. Maria Pastora sage. The farmer said, My beloved daughter, it would be best to proceed step by step. Since it is the afternoon, we can use the sage that you have cultivated. I must say, it has become a very powerful experience, yet also gentle and not too long or intense. It is just perfect for the afternoon. We call it Maria Pastora, as it has that divine essence. Afternoon, as they passed by the tomato and cucumber fields and reached the compost area, their eyes turned towards the hill of herbs and the tears of God. Maria said to Christos, All right, let us experience the divine wisdom of the sage. Christos replied, But I know this herb, yes, sage. We drink it as tea and use it as a mouthwash or disinfectant, especially as a carpenter. Maria responded, Yes, sage is a beautiful creation indeed, but my Maria Pastora sage is different. You will see. They made their way to the heart of the garden, where the table was set and the fireplace stood beside the vibrant meadow of life. Maria carefully gathered some thin dry wood to rekindle the fire from the remaining embers. Meanwhile, Christos went to the source well and returned with Maria's jug filled with fresh water. Ultimate symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria. The Ember method. Maria said to Christos, There are different ways to utilize the plants. We can make tea or consume them raw, and the smoke of certain plants has similar effects. Christos said, Oh really? I thought that was a specific property of the hashish used by the Shaman nomads. The first time I tried it, it was very potent and had a strong impact. Later, an old and wise Shaman offered me mint tea and mentioned that I could also eat it, but the effects would be milder. Maria replied, yes and no. When you eat raw hashish, the effects are indeed less intense. However, if it is properly dissolved in butter or oil, our bodies can fully absorb it. It's a sort of extraction process. The Maria Pastora has properties that make it less potent when consumed as a tea. The duration of its effects is not long, and since the body cannot absorb enough polyatoms in this short time, the impact is reduced. The water was boiling, and Maria prepared the tea. Maria said to Christos, for the tea, fresh plants are suitable, but dried plants and mushrooms have the same effect. I also brought some dried Maria Pastora, so what we'll do is drink the tea and, when we reach the threshold, inhale some smoke. Indigenous people have passed down the oldest technique to us, which involves placing a large piece of ember on the floor as a heat source. Then the dried herbs are sprinkled on top, and quickly a large cloth is placed over the head to capture the fumes and inhale the polyatoms. A pipe is just a modern adaptation of this method. Christos asked, so, instead of using a hookah and fire for the embers, we can simply consume the tears of God? Maria answered, yes, that's a clever idea, but in reality, it's not enjoyable, I swear. It's strange that almost all herbs used for medicinal purposes and tears of God, except mushrooms, have one thing in common: they are incredibly bitter and unbearable. Unless necessary, we can use alternative methods. It's also interesting to note that extracts from roots and certain cacti initially cause a feeling of sickness, but after 1 to 2 hours, the stomach discomfort subsides, and the effects begin. That's why smoking is an easy way to experience the effects, as it doesn't last too long but still provides a good impact. The digestion process in the stomach takes much longer, while the lungs can absorb polyatoms more quickly. Today, we'll drink the tea and use the cloth fumes technique to absorb enough polyatoms. Here's your tea. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The tiny star. Christos exclaimed loudly, now I understand what you meant by that. It's incredibly bitter. Maria replied, I brought some dried figs, they can help alleviate the bitterness. And remember, it's just a temporary sensation until the bitterness subsides. Maria went to the fire and retrieved some embers. She used a clay shard from an old amphora. Christos took the cloth and prepared it over his head to capture the fumes and polyatoms. Maria then sprinkled some of her Maria Pastora sage onto the embers. They both inhaled the polyatoms, and Christos had a good cough at one point. Maria said to Christos, now let's go into the tool shed and sit there. The darkness can also be quite interesting. Hurry. They entered the shed and took a seat. Christos could already feel the effects taking hold. Christos said to Maria, wow, this is quite different from the grassland or the Hashashin's shashar. They sat there, and Christos enjoyed the Maria Pastora, his first introduction to the tears of God. After a dozen or so minutes, they emerged from the shed. Christos looked around and said to Maria, that was an incredible feeling, like flying. I can still feel it in my body. The walls seemed to transform into a translucent state, and I could see the vast universe and saw through it. Maria said, yes, it's like a wave, intense but short-lived, making it perfect for the afternoon. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Did you have any visions? Christos replied, no, initially I saw the walls coming to life, as if they were breathing. Then the edges started to vibrate in a harmonious and comforting manner, blurring their true boundaries. As I focused on this, the walls turned translucent, and I felt like I was flying through the expansive universe. Eventually, it all subsided, and the walls returned to their solid form, revealing you standing before me. Maria exclaimed, and you call that no vision? It's what we call the experience of the universe, where we become part of it, like a planet or a tiny star traversing through space. There are other experiences as well, like the collector atom, and the cell experience, where you can connect with your beneficial bacteria or even see someone's skeletal structure. They embraced each other tightly, and after a cozy afternoon on the meadow, they returned to have a meal with the farmer. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The not everyday reality. Farmer said to Christos, I have also experienced that feeling, and Maria is right about the tiny star experience. The not everyday reality offers many places to explore, and the indigenous shamans know where to go to find the answers. Christos asked, what do you mean? What questions could they have? I thought it is better to be unconditional and have no questions. I don't understand. Maria replied, you are right in what you're saying. We should never ever be conditional in our walk and talk on earth, or when experiencing the universe. However, there is one exception, which is a gift from our beloved Father in heaven to help the children of earth. If it serves the greater good, it becomes our duty to assist others, as not everyone has the gift to be a shaman. It's not about being a shaman or not, but rather about our psychic abilities that make a difference. Christos said, oh yes, that's true. It's similar to using a dowsing rod to locate water sources. Not many people have that ability. My grandpa was asked to help a friend who was digging a well but couldn't find water. He went into the forest and found a suitable water source for their house. Maria replied, exactly. That is one purpose of serving others and carrying out the will of God, to locate water sources. The knowledge of healing is also very important, and it is the second part of the purpose for the tears of God, so that his beloved children don't have to suffer in pain. Many plants and mushrooms contain specific molecules that can heal certain ailments. To discover this, the shamans and wise individuals consult the kingdom of animals, as they have a deep love for us and possess knowledge about the plants and their true names and purposes. These animals become our friends, but if someone disobeys the laws of the 10 Commandments, they can also express their disapproval. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The shaman people. Christos asked, what do you mean by not obeying the law? I thought all shamans and wise people go there unconditionally. I don't understand. Maria answered, well, you are right. The animals can also provide answers to questions related to whether the tribe should leave a place or if something we desire is good for us or not. However, this is all in service of the greater good. If someone asks silly or irrelevant questions, they will be swiftly dismissed. This is the realm of the not everyday reality. We have discovered that the kingdom of mushrooms has a profound connection to this realm, providing answers to questions related to our bodies and other inquiries. Certain cacti can grant visions of the future and are closely tied to the animal kingdom. On the other hand, the tiny star experience is more universal in nature. A specific root extract can induce powerful visions of the root kingdom. Much like Maria Pastora, at a certain point, reality fades away, allowing for true out-of-body experiences. On Saturday, Maria said to Christos, now that we've had a good week and the garden is flourishing unconditionally, I think it's time to connect with the kingdom of mushrooms. Nighttime is more conducive to this exploration, while the day is at rest. Before sunset, they ventured deep into the garden, heading towards the forest beyond Maria's garden. They sat on the meadow in front of the woods, enjoying the warmth of the sun, and indulged in some dried mushrooms. Christos remarked, these mushrooms aren't bitter at all, they have an earthy taste. Maria replied, yes, that's why some gifted shamans prefer mushrooms. Each tear of God has its purpose, although not all are suitable for us. The major ones can offer any experience we may need. Ultimately, they connect us with our higher selves, allowing us to experience the forest, the kingdom of plants, or even the universe. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The mushroom kingdom. He burst into laughter, a hearty laugh that he couldn't contain. Christos said to Maria, "I'm sorry, it was just so funny, I couldn't help but laugh. Now I can see the effects taking hold of my vision. Look at the trees, oh, the trees. And the meadow too, can you see it?" Maria laughed and replied, "Oh yes, honey, I see it too. It's as if everything has come alive, moving and dancing to a deeper frequency. Now it's time to show you the forest, but first, give me a hug." Christos gazed at Maria's face, which seemed even more beautiful to him. He knew that it was the ultimate symmetry, and there was no doubt about it. Then he looked into her eyes, which appeared larger, more awake, and more alive than ever before. He felt the same sensation he had experienced on the market square, where reality seemed to fade away, and in her eyes, he could see the entire universe. Slowly, they entered the forest, and Maria took care to guide Christos, as it was a completely new experience for him. Christos exclaimed with delight, "Can you see it too? The forest is alive." Maria responded, "Oh yes, it's amazing. The trees and the mushrooms in the soil, they all seem to be moving and talking." Christos observed, "That's true, and the soil feels like it's breathing, as if we're walking on a huge sleeping being since it's nighttime. I can see forms and shapes emerging now, especially in the darkest areas. It's like an endless repetition of exquisitely beautiful patterns, all in vibrant colors rarely seen in any single garden. Can you see that too?" Maria replied, "Yes, we call those fractal patterns. They become infinitely smaller, yet they never lose their beauty. Shamans and wise individuals have discovered that if we set our intention to explore a lower level of the fractal, we can journey there, and our focus will reveal the visions to experience that level. That's how philosophers have come to understand the universe and define their philosophies. They refer to it as the philosopher's stone of wisdom. Similarly, alchemists have arrived at the wisdom of alchemy through experimental understanding." Christos marveled, "Wow, that's beautiful. Now I'm starting to understand. It's all connected to higher consciousness, which amplifies our intention into a supreme focus on collective knowledge." Maria shared, "We have encountered 2 individuals who were diagnosed as sick from birth, but as we discovered during a few medicinal rituals, they are not truly sick. In fact, one of them possesses a special gift, an ability to remember every new story they encounter, along with its precise date, solely through their brain. They lack the filters that ensure survival, making it impossible for them to live alone. We, on the other hand, have filters that help us select the content from our eyes and ears that is crucial for survival, while the rest goes directly into our subconscious. What's happening now is that these filters are not functioning properly, allowing us to increasingly connect with our higher selves. A guru or master would achieve a similar state through meditation and abstinence, but that can take a very long time. Here in the forest, there's a beautiful clearing with a large rock. Let's sit there and relax for a while." Christos said, "I love you, honey." They experienced the elemental aspect, where everything seemed alive and in constant motion, yet always in harmony with each other, like a magnificent symphony of creation on Gaia. The moonlight illuminated the clearing, casting its gentle glow on the small meadows and the large rock. Christos pointed out, "Look in the background, the trees are swaying and dancing, while the meadows around us appear to breathe. The trees and plants are communicating. Can you see it?" Maria responded, "Oh yes, it's incredibly beautiful. The meadows seem to resemble mushroom mycelium, pulsating with breath. I feel a deep sense of belonging and connection with everything and everyone here. It's as if, ultimately, we all come from the same place, except for some inverted creations that are not from God. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. Directions and places. They slowly made their way back to the garden, and the stars shone extra bright, seemingly dancing in the same universal rhythm as everything else. It was a beautiful night, and the connection to Mother Earth felt more impressive than ever before, all facilitated by the presence of their higher selves. Christos felt immense gratitude and said to Maria, "Thank you, Master." Maria replied, "You're welcome, and I love you." Christos went to the toilet, and in the pitch-black darkness, without a lantern, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and had a profound vision. He could turn and have another vision, and only after that did he light the lantern. When he returned to Maria, he was astonished. Christos exclaimed, "In the darkness, I had a very different vision compared to our time in the forest. I would instantly stand still, but then I would fly towards the west, soaring over the lands. It was incredibly beautiful to glide over the lush green landscapes. Then, I returned and turned my body 90 degrees, allowing me to experience all 4 directions. Each direction had its own unique colors and beauty, with the north embodying the concept of ice and snow. It was all so fascinating. I thought, perhaps I could turn my head and look upwards. Instantly, I would fly in that direction, and it became increasingly more beautiful and radiant until I caught a glimpse of the beginning of heaven. There stood a man, slightly older than me but appearing angelic, waiting for me with open arms. His unconditional love was so powerful, akin to a source transforming into a mighty river. Then, out of curiosity, I decided to look downwards. Immediately, I descended deeper and deeper, into darker and less aesthetically pleasing surroundings. I beheld a massive and imposing structure made of metal. It had a specific shape, resembling a puzzle that fit together when assembled correctly. It appeared like a colossal machine-like door, firmly shut. However, these shields or components were in motion, sliding over each other. In the middle, they would move outwards, creating a large opening for me to fly through. The shields were of enormous size and construction, with straight lines and various angles, lacking any rounded parts. As I flew through the opening, I witnessed countless tiny devils dancing in pairs, forming intricate patterns. The space beneath the shields was vast and filled with these grotesque creatures. Always, 2 little devils danced together, serving as counterpoints to one another and forming circular shapes. As I drew closer, I noticed that these dancing devils contained endless fractals within them, within every smaller dimension. It was as if the empty spaces of the larger devils were composed of tiny devil fractals. I perceived this as a representation of the principle underlying our society and the Luciferian structure here on Earth, where the model with the 1% elite is replicated in fractal layers. The teachers, clerks, and administrators represent the lowest level of power and income. Having seen enough, I turned around and flew back. As soon as I returned, I found myself back in the toilet. Maria listened intently and said, "That is a remarkable experience. I have only had one opportunity to witness the depths below. It happened when I was visiting someone with a friend of the farmer. There were other people present, and while I was alone in the kitchen, boiling water for cooking, I also saw these patterns. As the water slowly began to boil, I gazed at the pan, and as soon as the water moved, I saw the formation of a yin and yang symbol, created by the interplay of light and the gently boiling water. Intrigued, I wanted to observe it more closely to understand its composition. To my surprise, I saw the same pairs of ugly devils dancing together, reminiscent of clockwork gears and cogs. Upon closer inspection, I discovered that every empty space was filled with fractals of these devils. At that moment, I felt a tremendous force pulling me towards it, and I immediately pulled myself back. It was as if a dark beam from below, a doorway or opening, was trying to draw me in. I have never had such an experience with Master Farmer or in the Garden of Pythagoras. So, I assumed that one or more of the people in the other room must have fallen into temptation or something of the sort. Ultimate Symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria. The Tears of God. The next morning, during breakfast, the farmer was delighted to hear about Christos' new vision and the connection to the fractal concept, which originates from our one and only true God, but is also inverted by the one and only true false God. The farmer said, "You are making excellent progress as a master of botany. Not all humans are capable of receiving such profound visions, like both of you do, because a person can only go as far as their mind is not afraid. This is directly linked to consciousness and the higher state, whereas in the lower state, our survival brain tends to become fearful. Our entire power structure, the 1% versus 99% society, is built upon this concept. They artificially create problems to instill fear in people about the future and make them feel hatred or guilt about the past. This is enough to keep society's mind enslaved within the lower consciousness, where people do not experience reality firsthand, but instead learn from the theories of teachers and books. Paper absorbs any ink, as do stone or clay tablets, and that is why our beloved father was deeply saddened, and his tears fell upon the earth. Maria asked, "Oh yes, have you ever thought about this concept of the tears of God?" Christos answered, "Yes, I believe that God was sorrowful and created these plants for us to never forget about him in heaven." Maria replied, "You are correct. However, as the name suggests, in heaven we have different eyes and therefore perceive reality in a different way. The tears of God share the common characteristic that we can see with the eyes we possess in heaven, as well as all our other senses. This is to ensure that we never forget who we truly are, as this is the point where we are created in the same image." The farmer was incredibly proud of his beloved children and hugged them tightly. Ultimate Symmetry. The Root Kingdom. Maria. The Kingdom of Animals. The time passed, and in the evening, the farmer was delighted with the new knowledge Christos had acquired. Christos said, "I'm starting to understand now that there is a specific plant for every kind of ailment. White clover roots for wound disinfection, belladonna berries for cold fever, celandine for warts, comfrey for varicose veins, wormwood for indigestion, and camphor for joint and back pain." The farmer replied, "That's great, you're making excellent progress. What's next on your journey?" Maria answered, "Now it's time to visit the animal kingdom and perhaps experience some visions there." The farmer smiled and said, "Oh yes, the bitter turning sweet. I love that." It was Sunday afternoon, and as Maria had suggested, it was time to experience this peculiar phenomenon of bitterness transforming into sweetness. They sat in Maria's garden and drank tea. The weather was beautiful and warm, although some clouds were approaching from the western horizon. Maria said to Christos, "Here are the dark green fibers of the hashed plant that we scraped from the inside of the skin. We usually let them dry and then make a tea with warm water. Drink it all at once, that's wise." Christos exclaimed, "Now I understand what you mean by bitterness." After 20 minutes, Maria asked, "Do you feel it in your stomach? It might cause slight discomfort at first, but it won't harm your stomach. It's all part of the ritual. It will intensify for 1 to 2 hours, endure it, and then it will turn sweet. It seems to be a digestive process preparing the polyatoms for us." They lay on the meadow in front of Maria's garden table, and Christos curled up in the fetal position, holding his stomach with both hands. Christos confirmed, "You're right. It feels similar to the peppers from Master Vitruvius. It can cause strong stomach pain without actually harming the stomach. I once tried the spiciest peppers from him, and the pain was unbearable but bearable. Maria brought hot water from the stove, and they drank it. Suddenly, the pain disappeared, and sweetness filled them. Christos quickly stood up, feeling motivated, and looked around to experience some minor yet distinct changes in perception. He said to Maria, "Wow, your hot water is amazing. Now I feel the sweet taste in my body and mind. Can we go now?" Maria laughed and exclaimed, "I thought you'd never ask. Let's go." Hand in hand, they walked across the meadows and then through the forest. At the top of the hill, there was a narrow path for animals that Maria guided Christos along. Then they followed the river in its flow. It was an exciting experience to walk. They couldn't stand still and rest but had the movement of the wind in their hips. After a few hours, it started to drizzle as they returned to the garden and kindled a fire to prepare tea. Christos said, "The experience with the hash plant was quite different from the one with the mushrooms, even though both are very powerful." Maria replied, "Interesting, isn't it? As you say, all of God's tears seem to lead to the same realization, but in different ways or appearances. I consider it a feminine and masculine principle. However, with God's tears, it generally leans more towards the feminine aspect. The mushroom is very feminine and directly in symmetry with Gaia, Mother Earth. The hash plant, on the other hand, is directly connected to the animal kingdom." Christos responded, "I felt that with your green stuff, compared to the hash extract of the hash, your green stuff was completely feminine and had a greater impact on the mind, while the extract influenced the body more and provided a good feeling. By the way, what is your green stuff called?" Maria answered, "It's called hash, and I took the ancient wheat of the hash and bred it for several generations to achieve the sweetest taste of all. And what do you think about the hash plant?" Christos said, "With the vision of the animal kingdom, I now understand what you meant by that. Everything seemed not too dramatic until you showed me the experience on the ridge of the hill. Amazingly, as I followed you, my wrists became very light, and it was effortless to move them as if gravity no longer applied. But when the crows flew across the sky, I looked at them while walking. Immediately, my eyes and mind perfectly zoomed in on the bird and transported me there. I truly felt as if I could fly like a crow and see like one too. Then, as we walked along the river, I had the same experience with the water. I stared at the water and became one with it, flowing like the waves and feeling it with my whole body. And then the magical thing happened, once I looked into your eyes. The focus was immense, the surroundings completely disappeared, and I saw you with a different age and appearance, but feminine. And as soon as my eyes had to blink, I saw the next, completely different appearance of you, always perfectly visible without any blur." Maria replied, "Oh, darling, embrace me. I had the same vision when we looked into each other's eyes. Perhaps this isn't the first time we have met." Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The root kingdom. In the following week, in Master Maria's garden, there were various roots laid out on the table. It had taken them 2 days to search and find these roots. Maria said to Christos, "Finally, we have them. These roots will simmer in the pan as a soup for another 2 days to extract enough polyatoms from them. However, the effect will still be too weak. That's why we will use the seeds from another plant, the harmala. The harmala seeds will help amplify the root extract. But there's a catch. Before and after consuming this mixture, we must refrain from eating, drinking, or smoking. Otherwise, it could become toxic, as the harmala will amplify those substances as well. So, just like with the cactus, it starts off bitter before it becomes sweet." Maria went to the tree stump and used the back of her cleaver to crush the roots, placing them in a large pan. For the next 2 days, she let the extract simmer on the stove, making a new fire every morning. On Saturday, the weather in the garden was perfect, and Christos was filled with anticipation for the experience that awaited him. After exploring the kingdoms of Gaia, plants, mushrooms, animals, and earth, he wondered what else there could be to discover. They sat at the table in the garden and drank tea, while Maria brought the harmala seeds and her mortar. Meanwhile, Christos filled the big pan with water from the well. Maria explained, "This is a very ancient tradition, and not many people are aware of it. It involves knowledge of 2 different and essential components. I was fortunate enough to be brought to a wise woman, the master of roots, by the farmer. She was very old and passed away peacefully after I had learned from her and mastered the art of roots. Many plants have these specific polyatoms, but only in very small quantities." Christos asked, "But throughout this week, I kept wondering if there was anything else to experience after the kingdoms of plants, mushrooms, animals, and Gaia. I have seen the Milky Way in the universe, experienced all directions of the wind, even heaven and what some call hell. I could flow like water in the eternal darts of left, right, up, and down, fly like a bird and feel the wind beneath my wings, and be a raindrop riding on a cushion of air. I can't comprehend what more there could be." Maria replied, "That is the challenge of describing the not everyday reality in our language. Without experiencing it firsthand, our minds struggle to construct a meaningful image because there is no existing data. Our beloved Father in heaven, Alpha Intelligence, has created us in His image. The purpose of all tears of God is to connect us with our higher selves, which share the same image as God. This leads to a higher consciousness and the most powerful and fundamental concept of unconditional love, which becomes our ultimate intention that guides our particles. It's important to remember that the rituals of the tears of God are initiations that enable us to hold and embody unconditional love every day in a higher state of consciousness. We train and learn through the animals and plants, who are always unconditional, reflecting and teaching us the win-win principle of Alpha and Omega. You reap what you sow." Now, returning to your question, it seems you've forgotten one last experience or direction, so to speak. Well, I was curious as well and asked the same question to the farmer on our way to the root master Harmala, the wise woman. She said that everyone asks this very question when they reach the root kingdom after experiencing all the other kingdoms. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The polyatom of consciousness. Maria explained to Christos, what she did was use the root to ask the question and receive the answer. Root Master Harmala explained to me that it is also a polyatom produced in our body, just like the other tears of God, and that the extract only enhances the release of this polyatom. The only real difference is that this polyatom is responsible for birth and death, while in between, it is only sparingly used. She also mentioned that, like the other polyatoms, it connects us to a higher self, leading to the ultimate state of higher consciousness, but this time the direction is inward. Christos exclaimed, "I forgot about the inner experience. How could I have overlooked that?" Maria replied, "Yes, it is indeed very interesting. The root kingdom within." Christos exclaimed, "Wow, it can't get any better than that. I now understand why you named the seeds after Harmala, the wise woman. The root of the mandrake even looks like a human, rather than an animal or mushroom." Maria continued, and in the pan, there was only a small amount of liquid left at the bottom, with some clumps, which filled 2 half-cups. Maria said to Christos, "Now that the Harmala seed tea is already being digested, we can drink the mandrake soup in one go. Remember, we should not eat or drink anything for the next 5 hours, and that will be fine." They lay on the meadow, waiting for the bitterness to turn into sweetness. Gradually, the effects began to manifest, and when they looked at each other, they couldn't help but smile. The beauty of their bodily symmetry and the deepening focus caused the surroundings to fade away, while their eyes and loving intentions grew larger and larger. Christos couldn't get enough of Maria's psychic gift, her intense gaze filled with extraordinary intention, while the brilliance of her complete bodily symmetry shone like a star. They embraced each other, and as always, they fell deep into a profound state, but this time, the love was so intense, as if a tremendous current of love was flowing from each of them into the other. They had never felt such closeness to anything before, and once again, they experienced the ultimate symmetry, even deeper and stronger than ever before. Every atom in their bodies responded and began to dance, creating a feeling of bliss, joy, and love. They laid on their backs and gazed at the stars. After a while, Christos felt a wave rising and growing inside him, while the surroundings faded completely. He could feel the wave growing larger in his stomach until he was carried away, riding the wave. This time, the feeling of flying was based on pure love as the vehicle, floating on it. The experience was an entirely new sense of bliss and positivity. After a few hours, they returned to their senses, looked at each other, and sat down at the table. Christos said, "That was truly different, where every experience was filled with love as the chariot. I have never felt this way before, where it felt like love was pulling me out of my body to soar on these waves. Now I can fly with intention, to go somewhere." Maria said, "Oh yes, I felt the same way. It's amazing how much love is present when we are born or when we will die, but it becomes pure joy. I made the soup not too strong, so that you could experience it in a milder version of flying beforehand." Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The color spectrum bliss. Maria continued, "Each color in my energy body had its own unique frequency and vibration, and they all harmonized together in perfect symmetry. It was like a symphony of colors, dancing and interweaving with one another. The energy body itself seemed to emanate light from within, creating a luminous and vibrant aura around me. It was a visual representation of the ultimate harmony and balance in the root kingdom." Christos exclaimed, "Wow, that sounds truly incredible. I can only imagine the beauty and awe-inspiring nature of that experience. It must have been beyond words." Maria nodded with a smile. Indeed, it was a profound and transformative experience. The colors in the energy body were not just visual, but they also had a profound impact on my state of being. Each color carried a unique energy and vibration, and as I immersed myself in this colorful symphony, I felt a deep sense of peace, joy, and interconnectedness with everything around me. It was as if I was tapping into the very essence of creation itself. Christos asked, "Did you receive any answers or insights during this experience? Did the root master angels communicate with you?" Maria replied, "Yes, indeed. As I immersed myself in the energy body and connected with the root master angels, I received profound insights and answers to my questions. They communicated with me through a combination of visual symbols, sensations, and intuitive knowing. It was a language of pure consciousness and deep understanding. They showed me the interconnectedness of all things, the divine harmony that permeates the universe, and the power of unconditional love as the guiding force of creation. It was a revelation of the highest truth and wisdom." Christos sighed in amazement. "That is truly extraordinary, Maria. To have such a direct and profound connection with the root kingdom and receive such profound wisdom and insights. I can only imagine the impact it had on you and your understanding of the universe." Maria smiled warmly. "Yes, it was a life-changing experience. It deepened my connection with the root kingdom and expanded my awareness of the infinite possibilities that exist within and beyond our physical reality. It reaffirmed the fundamental principle of ultimate symmetry and the inherent harmony that underlies all of creation. I am forever grateful for this journey and the wisdom it has bestowed upon me. Christos embraced Maria, feeling a deep sense of awe and gratitude for the profound experiences they had shared. They knew that their journey through the root kingdom had only just begun, and they were filled with anticipation for the new insights and adventures that awaited them. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The Alpha creation vision. Now another being appeared in front of me, which would look the same, and also on the inside I could see a body, and he felt male. In this moment I would feel this unconditional love coming from him, which was extraordinarily strong, and instead of hearing words, he would show me some fancy visualization of the newest developed technology, but I could not understand what it is good for, or what it is doing. In this moment he would look at me closely, as if his focus would scan my appearance to find out who I am. Now I felt a huge wave of unconditional love, and he began just at the beginning to teach me all of it from every level. It was the unconditional love as the base of his teachings, as if the knowledge was floating on unconditional love as a substrate that was part of his wisdom. Now he began to show me the first layer, which was like a carousel that was turning, while instead of horses, it had flowers that turned also around its own axis. This was only one unit, and now I could see a full circle, consisting out of these carousels, where they would turn counterclockwise to each other, in perfect distance, symmetry and beauty. I can hardly remember, but for each layer, it would be 8 to 32 of these carousels, but some had smaller carousels like cogs in between. The eternal motion was so perfect to look at, and now I understand how it would work, but just at that moment when I was very grateful, he zoomed out and out and out until this huge structure of motion became the size of a needle head, and then I could see that this whole structure was only the fractal of a much bigger and bigger structure. Now these tiny parts would assemble the next carousel-like structure, which also had this eternal motion, and also now I saw that this is only one of a dozen of the same carousel structures that counter-rotate in full harmony and alignment. Also at that moment, where I understand why the eternal motion of the smaller level was driving and aligning the bigger level, he showed me the same, that also this level is only a fractal of a bigger level. This was such a feeling of compassion, where he would see if I could understand, and if not, he would expand, simplify and focus, until I understand completely. More and more top levels would build up and I could understand all of it. The size comparison between each layer is nuts, and beyond words, as if you compare a mosquito pimple with the Great Mountain. Now at the last layer, it became a huge clump of some sort, and I was understanding, but I could not see the possible eternal motion of the next top level layer. All for a sudden, when zooming out, I could see that it was a cell, and now I saw a human body. Christos shout, "That is amazing, honey, give me a hug." Do you mean that all these layers you saw are assembling our body? Maria answered, "Oh yes, my dear, they do. It is this densification process, making after all, our body and all other matter. The synchronization is from the first layer through all other layers, and even the top level layer is in full synchronicity with this tiny low level layer. It is the stack full of symmetry, otherwise it could not work at all, if only one of these layers would be out of sync." Christos asked, "That is rather unusual. How long did these teachings took to learn, and when did you came back, and how does this technology works, if you understand all of it?" Maria answered, "Well, the root master would say goodbye, but by telepathic means, and another came by and had the plant teachings for me, which was the same base, but somehow the upper levels became different. Then the colors would slowly fade into gray, and I knew exactly that it is time now to go back. I saw this thin elastic wire, like an umbilical cord, keep the connection to my body on earth, and as I embraced this umbilical cord, I would instantly accelerating back, the same way I came. After 2 weeks, being there, I could learn a lot, and now I opened my eyes to see Root Master Harmala, which was sitting at the bed, waiting for me. I was so filled with this unconditional love of the communication, that I could not speak but must hug her hard. Then I asked how many days I was there in the root kingdom, but she did not understand, so I asked again, but she said I was there for 1 minute, less than 2. Ultimate symmetry. The root kingdom. Maria. The negative time-space. Maria continued, I have contemplated the eternal motion many times, which is so perfect and in resonance with each other, with the smallest layer driving them all. But how can one explain a concept that utilizes time-space as we do, but only on one half, while on the other half, the carousel flowers experience negative time and space to complete the eternal motion based on resonance? It is impossible to explain to someone else, as they would not even grasp the multitude of colors in the energy body, so I would never attempt to explain it again. I experienced the concept of alpha intelligence, the creation octave symmetry, with its positive and negative cycles, rather than solely focusing on time-space, which is just one cycle. Lady Nada is the perfect example of how particles follow our intention, and I find her truly captivating, for lack of a better word. The feeling of the root kingdom and its extraordinary unconditional love lasted for a week, although the perceived time I spent there decreased to 8 hours. It truly shows the relativity of our time perception here, with scholars and their hour-long lectures until the next break, which is quite comical. Atoms transform into polyatoms, but the levels below them are immensely important and beautiful, and should never, ever be disregarded. The atom is a unified entity, and as I mentioned before, if one of the lower layers is disrupted, the entire structure falls apart. Christos exclaimed, that is an incredible experience. No philosopher or wise person could ever explain this to me, and I have never heard about the root kingdom or the kingdom of water from anyone I've ever met. Maria said to Christos, give me the tightest hug you can and never let go, okay? Hand in hand, they made their way back to the farmer's house, and Christos was deeply amazed by Maria's encounter with the atom. He had never met anyone like her, not before, nor after. It was pure bliss, and their love for each other was so strong that they only needed to discuss fascinating topics, as their usual intentions were clear without words, much like with the animals and plants. They were fully immersed in the ultimate symmetry, connected to each other in every way.